Hi everybody, welcome to Comics Tuesday, and today we're going to be talking about Spider-Man. So, you remember the time that Spidey was hanging around and the Sinister Six shows up and he slices the Green Goblin's throat? No? How about the time that Aunt May gave Spider-Man a pair of web shooters and he couldn't figure out how to make his web fluid and he was trying to swing around but was really awkward? Or how about the time that Spider-Man just packed up and left and lived on the road for a number of years? Ooh. Or how about when Spider-Man was ritualistically sacrificed to revive Kraven the Hunter? Doesn't sound like the Peter Parker you know? That's because it wasn't Peter. Today we're going to be talking about the great Spider-Men who are not Peter Parker. Or as I like to call it, pull out your Peter. Alright, so my favorite superhero ever is Spider-Man, Peter Parker. And I'm pretty vocal about the fact that my biggest irritation is when a writer will just put him right on in a story that makes no sense. Not that it's necessarily a bad story all the time, but sometimes it goes completely against Peter as a character or against his history or something like that, but they stick their Peter in anyway. And I think that there's a really simple solution to that. Just use another character. That's all. That's all you gotta do. And now, I know there's a tendency for non-Peter Spider-Man to cause a controversy. For example, there's the Clone Saga, possibly one of the most hated stories in Spider-Man's history. And there's the death of Ultimate Spider-Man. That was poorly received, but it's a great story, and then people kind of come around later. But I think that those types of characters are really important. The ones that, kind of take the focus away from Peter Parker. And just let him have the main title, The Amazing Spider-Man, be really great. I think that it really helps with that if you have other characters to explore this, that, and the other. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And the first character I'm going to be talking about is Miguel OHara, the Spider-Man from the year 2099. And I think what's really amazing, spectacular, ultimate web about Miguel is that he's barely connected to Peter Parker. And that is to the extent that he's aware there was a Spider-Man in the current day. But way in the future, here's Miguel, and he acquires spider powers and kind of has a template to follow. But he is his own character, totally different from Peter, and he's a different kind of Spider-Man. And I gotta tell you, they really pulled this off. Miguel and Spidey 2099. It's unique on this little list here in that this is the only one that I don't know of it really pissing anybody off. It didn't really piss anybody off till right this moment. You hear that, Marvel? You messed up. Peter David, you can kiss my ass. And so next up, you got kind of a 1-2 punch with the clones. And the first of the two is Ben Reilly. Ben Reilly is a perfect copy of Peter Parker. Even has his memories up until the point that Ben was cloned. But Ben Reilly went off and wandered the Earth for a number of years, so when he returns, he has a different history from Peter. And that's a really useful tool for putting him in stories. At that point, Peter's married. He's fought every villain he has a dozen times. So, if you were writing Spider-Man and you really want to have him date 2 girls at once and fight Venom for the first time, Ben Reilly's free to do that. And next up you have Kane Parker, who is the other clone of Spider-Man, who for the first moments of his life appeared perfect. But he began to degenerate both mentally and physically. He didn't have Peter's memories. He becomes scarred and ugly and alienated and doesn't feel accepted by anyone. And he grows vengeful to Ben Reilly and Peter. And so they have a character who's more or less Peter Parker, Spider-Man, but turned just enough that they bring him in as a villain. He comes and he starts whooping Spider ass. Kane filled that role well, and through something that I like to call character development, I'm a big fan of it. Kane comes around and eventually becomes a hero, and because he doesn't have Peter's memories, he wasn't raised by Aunt May and Uncle Ben. He has less motivating him, but he still has Peter to look up to, and because of that, he ends up being a great hero. And next up is Otto Octavius, Dr. Octopus, or more relevantly to this video, the Superior Spider-Man. And how Superior Spider-Man happens is, in Amazing 699 and 700, Dr. Octopus finally gets his big win over Peter. He devised this machine to put his consciousness into Peter Parker's body. And so he totally erases Peter's mind and puts his Octo brain in there, and he becomes Spider-Man. And so he has all of Spider-Man's powers and starts to feel the weight of the responsibility. He has just enough Peter in him. He has just enough Peter in him that he knows what he has to do with his powers. And so there's a lot of really interesting antics because he's a villain trying to be a hero. You have him teaming up with the Sinister Six, and he fights the Avengers, and he gathers up his little army of Spider-Minions. But ultimately, he has a lot of successful heroic acts, just because he believed that he could change. And that's what's so great about Superior Spider-Man. If you haven't read it, do. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with Miles Morales, the Ultimate Spider-Man. The remarkable thing about Miles is his relation to Peter. He was bitten by a radioactive spider, and he developed spider powers. But with one major difference, he just didn't want to go out and become a superhero, which is completely reasonable. It's something you can relate to. So he tries to keep to his normal life as much as he can. And then things change when Peter Parker is killed, and all of a sudden Miles has this horrible guilt because he believes that had he been in the costume out fighting crime, that maybe two Spider-Men could have overcome the Sinister Six, and maybe Peter wouldn't have died. So he has that guilt, and Peter is advanced. There it is again, character development. Peter kind of advances and becomes his own version of Uncle Ben because Miles knows that maybe there's something he could have done about Peter's death, and so he tries to do his best to replace Peter. And so you have this really interesting dynamic, and at the same time you have a younger, less experienced Spider-Man, and you have a lot of fumbling and learning how to do things for the first time. And throughout all of it, Miles is a very heroic character, and one of my favorites that's ever been written. But that's it for this week, and it's time for the viewer question, which is, if you could choose one comic book character and make it so that they never existed, who would you choose? For me, my answer is, let's see, hold on, Silk. And leave your answers down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like my video, subscribe to my channel, and come back next week for the next Comics Tuesday. And on the next Comics Tuesday, we're going to talk about Thor's Unbreakable Thong. You don't want to miss that one. Thanks for watching.